Welcome to the 4th update video for Survive. Survive is an open-world zombie survival first-person shooter that is set in a massive procedural open world. In this update, I worked on a lot of things. The first thing you will notice is I further improved the lighting system, fixing the specular highlights and adding point lights to the scene. Now if I change the time of day to night, you can really see how the point lights light up the dark. You can see I added a reddish light for the fire, a green light here in front of the zombie, and a blue light over the tiles. So if I come over here to our new zombie, and then only render the lighting, you can really see how it adds to the scene. And then, if I only render the specular highlights, you can see how the light reflects off the ground in a realistic way. The next big thing I worked on was the particle system. I completely overhauled this system so now it can support almost any effect that we would want to create for the game. You can see the fire and the rain effects right now. Every effect is loaded from an XML file and can be changed and reloaded at runtime for very quick iteration. For example, I could go into the effect file for the fire here and change the fire to a bluish purple. So if I just go in here and change the start color from red to blue, and then now reload the effect, now we have a bluish purple fire. So I can go back into this file here and then change the emission rate to make the fire much less dense. Now let me just change the fire back to the regular fire, and then I can also change the smoke to yellow, and then reload the file. With this system in place, we can tweak the parameters and see the results very quickly to get the effects that we want. Now I can also jump into this rain file and tweak the size, speed, and turbulence of the particles to create a snow effect. You may also notice this text at the top left corner of the screen. It shows the time in milliseconds it takes for each frame to render and update, and some other useful counters. This text has been extremely important in helping me make the decal and instancing system much more efficient. These are the next two things that I worked on. The instance system is used to render the same model a huge number of times very efficiently. Right now it is being used to render these boxes and all of the decals. In the future it will be used to render the grass and vegetation system as well as many other things. Now the decal system and the effects system come together to do weapon shooting. You can see when I shoot this test block whose material is set to skin, it displays a blood decal and a blood effect. Just like when I shot the metal floor, it played a spark effect and left behind a metal bullet hole decal. Now if I go and shoot this concrete barrier over here, rocks fly off of it and a different bullet hole decal is left behind. The instance system that renders the decals is very efficient. It can render about 50,000 decals in 23 milliseconds, or 45 frames per second. Now obviously there'll never be that many decals in the game, but it's nice to know the system can handle it because it will be used in many other parts of the game. Every time you shoot a dynamic object just like these boxes, the decals will attach to them and move just like the boxes do. So by displaying the decal projection volumes, you can see how the decals attach to the boxes. You can also see, like the rest of the scene, when you shoot the grass and the boxes, they both leave behind their own decal and display their own effect. I also use the particle system to create a complex explosion effect that could be used for grenades or for when things like cars or gas cans explode. Just like the gun, the explosion leaves behind a scorch mark wherever it explodes using the same decal system. I can also freeze the game time to inspect individual effects. This is very useful for debugging, as well as making some interesting things happen. So I can freeze the game here, then shoot the gun a few times, and create some explosions, then unfreeze the game to see all the effects play at the same time. When the effects are frozen like this, it makes trying to find any problems with them very easy. It also looks really cool. Now that the time is frozen, I can also step the time ahead one frame at a time to see the effects in action. I can also freeze time and then shoot some boxes in the air and make explosions on them, and then later unfreeze time, and see the explosions in midair. I also changed the scale of the game so that every unit in the game is 1 meter in real life. I made this scale box here that also bleeds when you shoot it, so you can see how big everything is in the game. So if you look at this box and then look at the zombie, you can see that he's about 2 meters tall, or 6'5". I also added a debug drawing system that can efficiently draw huge numbers of lines very quickly. You've already seen this in action with the decal projection volumes, but I also used it to visualize the physics objects that are actually being used for collision. I'll use the new static zombie to test the loading of arbitrary physics models, but later he will have a separate physics object for each of his limbs. You may notice two things about the weapon shooting. One, there is no weapon animation, and two, there are no sounds. There was a problem loading in my weapon animations because they were done differently than the animations I showed in the last video. So I have to make the animation parser more robust to handle the weapon animation files, and that's what I'm working on next, along with a 3D sound system for the whole game. Survive is now available for pre-order. If you pre-order Survive, you'll be able to download the latest builds of the game and try it out. Well, that's it for this video, and thanks for watching. You can follow the development blog and pre-order Survive at subsurfacegames.com.